Madison Garver. I am from Bernalillo County, and over my years being in 4-H, I've met a lot of kids that say that they either A, want to take over their family's ranch, or B, they want to start their own beef operation. And recently, I have learned that there's a lot more to managing a ranch than people realize. So today I would like to present to you some of the things that you want to consider when starting a ranch of your own or running a ranch of your own. First and foremost, you need grass. If you don't have grass, your cows have nothing to eat, so you need forage. The best way to figure out how many cows you can have on your property is to figure out your carrying capacity. I'm sure everybody learned in a science class or biology class at some point that carrying capacity is the number of animals you can have on a piece of property for like a long term without damaging the ecosystem. And your carrying capacity depends on how much land you have and how much vegetation there is on the land, which in this state makes a big difference if you're north or anywhere else. I won't talk about the AUMs yet, I'll talk about that in a second. Your stocking rate is the number of animals that you choose to put on the property. And a lot of things, there's some factors you have to consider when you're figuring this stuff out. You need to know what kind of animals you have. You need to figure out how many, where they're gonna be grazing, how long they're gonna be grazing. Okay, so your stocking rate. So when you stock your property, you don't wanna overgraze, you don't wanna undergraze, you want your cows to harvest your grass so you have what's called plant residue, or it's also called crop residue or agricultural residue. And what that is, it's the leftover stuff. It's the stems, it's the leaves, it's the stuff that's left after they graze. And that can help with plant health. It helps kind of cycle nutrients back into the soil and maintain the soil health. It also acts as like a protective layer, or like I guess protective blanket of the soil from like erosion. It helps the groundwater get back into the ground. And also it's good for the wildlife. And when the soil health is maintained and stuff can grow back, that means the wildlife can also graze on it. Okay, so this part looks a lot more confusing than it really is. An AU is just a 1,000-pound cow. They eat about 25 pounds of forage a day, or the equivalent to that. So down here at the bottom, these are all, I guess like equivalent. So like, let's say a yearling. A yearling is about half the size the cow is. So for about 2 yearlings, you have about the same as like a cow calf pair. An AUM is the amount of dry forage that 1,000-pound animal or its equivalent eats in a month. So when you calculate your AUMs and you figure out, like, say, you figure out your wildlife first. How much is your wildlife eating? They call that a restriction also. So you figure out how much your wildlife is eating, subtract it away from the amount of forage you have, and then you can then tell how many cows you can have on your property. There's restrictions like water, distance to water. If your cows won't go as far from water, so like the forage in that area might not be grazed as much. Same with slope, they won't be on really steep areas, and the wildlife will also be eating some of the forage, so you have to consider that in your stocking rate as well. So this is the steps. It's a lot easier to show it on paper, but I'm not gonna do that. You have to figure out how many acres, you have to figure out your restrictions and take that away from the amount of forage you have. This is an important step, so once you figure out the amount of forage you have, you want to multiply it by 40% because not all of it is going to be usable. And so that's kind of like the ballpark number that you're supposed to multiply it by. Calculate your AUMs. So if you have any other animals on the property, like horses or like your wildlife, like I said, you'll use your AUM, or you'll figure out the number of AUMs you have, and that will tell you your demand and whether or not you can support that number of animals. Okay, so rangeland management. This is how you figure out how much forage you have. One of the best ways you can do it is by clipping and weighing. So on your ranch, a lot of people will put these, they're called grazing cages. So they put a cage on a part of the property that's pretty, not like super close or super far from water. somewhere that's pretty easily accessible, and that's similar to the rest of the property. So they'll put this cage down and they'll leave it there for a while, and it's so the ranchers can see the difference between the grass that's been grazed and the grass that hasn't. And a lot of times, what you'll see is the grass in the cages will be dead, because you need to harvest it in order to keep the health of the grass, to get your grass to grow back. So, close to these cages, they'll put a stake in the ground, like a metal stake, and what you do is you start at the stake, and you have a paper that looks like this one. It has these charts all the way down, and you start at the stake, and you'll take 2 steps out, and you have what's called a grazing stick. It's like an extendable ruler, and right where your foot lands, the end of your foot, you'll put it down, and if it's bare ground, you'll put B, and if there's a plant there, you put vegetation, and then you put the kind of grass that's there. So for example, the blue is blue grama, there was gayeta, there was ring, and you have to, that's another thing, you have to learn what kind of grasses are in your area. So you go through, you do all that, and then once you get out to, we only did, I think it was 40 yards. It was after 20 data points. You will throw this little like cable ring down on the grass, right? You'll clip everything in the circle, throw it in a paper bag, and then you dry it out, and then you use this little, it looks like a tube, and you clip it on there and you weigh it, and then there's an equation that you can use for that to figure out how many pounds of forage per acre that you have. And then the conservative stocking rate, the recommended amount is 30 to 35%. You don't want to graze all your grass, but you also don't want to undergraze, because then again, the plant health can go down. So then also you need to consider what type of operation you want to do. There's cow-calf, where you have cows and heifers maintained to produce calves every year. You can do stockers and yearlings. So you bring them in the early spring, feed them all summer, send them to the feedlot in the fall. Another thing you can do with those, if you don't, some places will get them just purely to harvest grass, and they won't actually purchase them. They'll lease the land to someone else. So they'll do, I think, like $125 per head is what some people do, and they'll bring other people's stockers on to graze all summer, to harvest the grass, and then they send them out to the feedlot. You can also do a combination. Like I said, some people do combinations of cow-calves and stockers, and they'll just lease their land. And then you have to also consider how you want to sell them. The sale barn, depending on what type of year or time of the year you go, can be more or less. Like if you go right in August, October, when, August, September, when everybody's selling, you're not going to get as much per pound. I recommend the online auction. Superior has a really good online auction. You can put as many calves as you want in there, and they auction them off. You can also have what they call a county buyer, so someone that just comes in every year, says, I'll take them all, and then buy all of your stock. And you can do, some people will hold like 20 or 30 cows just for private treaties to sell to people that want that to butcher them. Okay, so this is my favorite part. This is the part I could talk a lot about, is the breeding and reproduction stuff. This is just a timeline of kind of when you do all of this stuff. So in like May, you want to start synchronizing your heifers. About, I guess it says 9 days after you sync them, then I recommend breeding heifers with AI, just because you can pick bulls with low birth weights, which means you don't have to pull calves. It means calves won't get stuck, which means you'll save calves and cows from dying, which is thousands of dollars lost if that happens. So you synchronize your heifers. A few weeks after that, you'll turn out the bulls to do cleanup, and you can turn out the bulls on your cows too. One of the things that is highly recommended is to have like a shorter breeding season. You tighten the breeding season up so that all the calves are close to the same size and age and are more, I guess, consistent. So weaning calves, it kind of depends on what you want to do. You can wean them lighter, you can take them right at weaning, sell them all, or you can wait a little longer till they get a little heavier, get a little more weight on them, and you'll get a little bit more money because they're heavier. Calves are vaccinated twice. They're vaccinated once at branding and once at weaning. And then you also have to give heifers, if you're keeping replacement heifers, you have to give them a third shot right before you breed them again, and then every year you should give your cows and bulls a booster. In that picture there, that's where they rope them and drag them to the fire. I find that doing it in a chute is a lot easier because you can do less. You can do it with less people. You can brand, tag, castrate, do all of that kind of stuff. And it doesn't take as many people. Horses, I don't do a lot with horses. I don't know a lot about horses, so I don't have much information on them. But depending on how many cows you have, that'll determine how many horses you need to move them. They can be used to, navigate the terrain, move your livestock. So people will breed them and sell the foals for extra money. So farming, if you have water to irrigate, irrigating's good. Water rights are about as clear as mud. They're very confusing. And yeah, they're a little hard to understand. But if you're able to irrigate and you're able to grow grass, it's nice to be able to bale that up and supplement your cattle in the winter when there's not as much grass, or you can sell it also for extra money. Other enterprise things, what a lot of ranches do is hunting and outfitting. The Game and Fish will give landowners tags if they ask for different species, just depending on how many they think's on their property. And you can sell those tags I know a lot of places will do guided hunts and they'll sell them for a lot. And that's how they make a lot of their money. Sometimes, people, I know the CS Ranch has a barn that they do weddings in, so they do stuff like that, and you can also do stuff like cabins, do ranches, extra things on the side to make more money, because the cows unfortunately aren't gonna make a whole lot of profit. This is the part that is the least fun, economics. This is a balance sheet, so whenever you sit down, you have to put all of your current assets down, which is everything that's gonna turn into cash within the year. All the animals you're selling, anything you're selling in that year, that's gonna turn into money. Non-current assets are things that are longer term that are not gonna turn into money that year, and things you own that are gonna help you get money, but not necessarily turn into cash. Current liabilities are the things like the expenses you have that year, and then again, the non-current are stuff like loans and stuff that are gonna be extended past the year. To find your net worth, you just take your assets and subtract your liabilities. And this is, like I said, a balance sheet. This is just a snapshot in time. It's not always current. So you want to do multiple of these a year, and it just shows you where your financial standings are. I don't have a slide for this because I don't have a ton of information about it, but I know Ag Trust Farm Credit will do loans for specifically for equipment or for land. If I knew more about that, I would tell you more about that. I don't know about that. And that's all I have. What inspired me to give this presentation was a few weeks ago, I went to ranch camp, a youth ranch management camp in Cimarron, New Mexico. And this is what our whole week was about. Basically, all the information on that slide is what we worked on all week. We got practice in it, we learned about it. And I learned a lot. There was a lot more to it, especially on the financial side, than I had realized. And so I figured other people probably also don't realize that unless they're, see it firsthand. So that is all I have. Thank you.
So what's the average cost per cow in New Mexico?
So, I should have left it in there. I had a chart with that. Per year, or?
How much does it cost to run her per year?
Per head per year, I would say on average $500. Or wait, I think. Oh, I should have left it in my presentation. I had a chart about that. I would say about 500, just with supplements and all of that, if you do supplement, which in this state, you sometimes have to, because we don't always have a lot of grass, because we don't have water.
Is this something that you plan on pursuing in terms of a career?
I do, yeah. I like I said, I like the breeding and reproduction stuff. I think that's really interesting. One thing I forgot to talk about was preg checking. I really enjoy that, and AI. Preg checking is really important because it can save you a lot of money. If you preg check your cows on your own and you don't pay a vet to come do it, you can find the open ones and sell them, and that saves you a feed bill. for the winter. And so that's something I think is really important, that, and something very, very interesting that I would like to probably pursue.
Any further questions from the judges?
Thank you guys.